All right. So we are recording. We may have a few people kind of jump on here as we go through our class today, but just one other thing I wanted to check, and it sounds like we're good, but it sounds like, can everybody hear me okay? If you can hear me all right, no static or anything, just drop a quick yes in the chat. I'm assuming everybody can because I'm seeing like you guys comment on different things. So, okay. So we are good there. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to, again, talk about the basics of Instanet today. So just kind of as an FYI, there's different components. When I say the word Instanet, it's kind of the catch-all for components like transaction desk, Authentisign, the doc box, and things like that. So we're going to go through all of that here today. Instanet, just a little bit of background on it. So Instanet is a transaction management platform. So Instanet allows you to keep track of all of your transactions and everything that essentially goes along with that transaction. And so why is that important? Just share in the chat a quick drop. Like, is it important for us as brokers to make sure we maintain good files? So yeah, definitely it is. So this is, in my opinion, aside from probably lead generation, one of the most important things that you are going to do. And yes, you're required, or they're required to be kept for at least 6 years. But this is, again, probably one of the most important things that you're going to do. So I think it's really important because the more robust and complete your file is, the less chance you have of having an issue down the line. So what will happen, if this hasn't already happened to you, is your client will call you 3 months after closing and tell you that their hot water heater broke. And you're going to have to go back into your file and do some research. And the more stuff you have in your file, then you can go back and say, okay, here was the chain of events that occurred. Here was our correspondence about this. Here's who repaired it. Here's copies of the receipts. So I am really an advocate for keeping everything, especially now in our industry, is just, it's so high risk in terms of lawsuits and things like that. So we're going to run through using one of those platforms, which is Instanet. This platform, just as an FYI, is actually managed by NMAR. So NMAR, the New Mexico Association of Realtors, actually holds the contract for Instanet. And so by proxy, as you guys being member of GAR, you are also members of NMAR and therefore have access to this platform. So we're going to start by walking through a lot of the tools, how to set up a file, how to kind of organize your home screen, and run through kind of how to walk through as if you had a mock transaction today. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions that are top of mind that they're hoping to get out of today's class? If you do, just drop them in the chat and we'll make sure that we can do our best to get those covered. Okay, I don't see anything yet, but again, if something comes up, just drop your questions in the chat here. Okay, I have shared my screen and I have already started within my Instanet agent dashboard here. Everybody can see my screen, I'm assuming. If you can see my screen, just drop a yes in the chat box there. Cool. All right, sweet. Okay. Task number 2 of the day accomplished. Okay, so there are a couple of ways to get into Instanet. The way that I actually got in today was through my Flex account. So again, this is going to be the one way to get in. There's lots of ways to get into this platform through the single sign-in platform. on your GAR member homepage within your member portal is one way. Let me find my mouse here. Another way is through Flex, and I just did that by going to Menu, Instanet, it's under Products. And when I click here, it launches me into a new screen. And then the third way is actually through a specific property, which we won't go through the entire steps here, but you can actually, through a property here, like if I was going to write a offer on this Avenida Los Sueños, I can launch through a link right here in this particular property. So there's 3 ways that we can get to that. And that's just more for your information here. Okay. So now I am in my agent dashboard here. So just as an FYI, we're not going to get into this today. I don't know offhand who on the call, I don't think on the surface I see anybody who's a qualifying broker. There are 2 dashboards within here, and we're actually going to just stick strictly with the agent dashboard today. So that's what you're seeing. Now this is my dashboard. If yours, and let's say you're following along, and if yours looks a little different, or if you log in after the fact and yours isn't laid out this way, you don't have to panic. You can set up how you want your dashboard to look. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that first. Off to the left-hand side here, I have some menu options, which we're going to run through a lot of these today. The first one up here, which we happen to be on, which is the default, is I call it the gas tank. And so that is an overall picture of your dashboard. So every single transaction and everything that's going on for all your files is going to be here on the dashboard. But I want to point out a couple of things that you will see throughout the different components when we click on them here today. So for instance, there's these little TVs that are built in throughout the system. So as I click through different components today, you'll see these little TVs here. So just as an FYI, what these are intended for is if you get stuck on something within this particular screen, this is just a short tutorial. They range from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes on how to navigate this particular screen. The next thing you will see here is a keypad lock. So mine happens to be locked. I'm going to click it to unlock it. And so as you see, when I click that, my screen changes just a bit to basically open up the different components of my dashboard. So just as an FYI, I'm going to lock that up. When I unlock this, what drops down for me are different options that I can choose for my dashboard. And I have most of them on here already, but these are quick launch components. So if I want to create a new transaction, email documents, etc., these are buttons that I can add to my page, and they're all listed up here. I can also move these around. So I can make them smaller, I can make them longer, I can put them in the order that I want to see them. Now this is going to be unique to everybody's specific Instanet account. So for instance, Karen, if you were to log into yours, you may want to see your tasks as the first thing that you see. And so just note, everybody's can look different. One thing to note is once you are done customizing your screen, click the lock. Because what I've done in the past too is I've got in here and clicked around, and then I've moved stuff and I've been like, why did I move this? Or what happened to this particular button? So unlocking allows you to move things around. As you can see, I'm kind of moving these guys around here. Locking it back up closes that screen. So it doesn't allow you to make any edits to anything. So once you have customized your dashboard, you're ready to begin facilitating your transaction. So do I have any questions so far? Okay, looks like everybody is good. So let's walk through creating a transaction. So I want to point out some things for you as we create a transaction. Then we'll walk through the different components of that, the forms and the documents. And then towards the end, I want to show you how to use the taskbar, and I want to show you how to create folders and a couple of options for templates. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a transaction. So what I've got here is on my dashboard is I have a file here for my transactions. The second tab, the house icon, is my transaction icon. So up here are the thing that I'm going to see under my gas tank is everything that I have going on. When I click on the house or in transactions, I only have one right now, but I have a list of my individual transactions. So the gas tank essentially is my big picture, so the big scope of what I have going on. The house will take me into my individual transactions. So I would have Kelly's Test House. I may have another address here. So all the transactions I have going on will be listed here. And when I click into the transaction, this is the components of my single transaction. So the difference being gas tank, again, the big picture, just a summary of everything I have going on. I click down into the transaction. I can open up each transaction, 123 Main Street, 456 Main Street, and I can see within that what is going on just specific to that particular transaction. So we're going to go back to our transaction overview. Actually, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and start here on my dashboard, and I'm going to create a new transaction. So remember, there's more than one way to initiate a transaction. We're going to do this directly from our Instanet account. So maybe this is a listing that we're going to create. I'm going to click Create Transaction. And so that will create another transaction record right here in my transaction desk. I'm going to open Create Transaction. Okay, there's a couple of things I want to point out here. I have the Use Wizard checked here. So this is an option for you. You can uncheck it. However, for this example, I'm going to leave it checked. The wizard is a longer process, but it's kind of like doing the work up front and then not having so much work to do later. The wizard will take you step by step and ask you to create all your contacts and set up all of the details of this particular transaction. The advantage to doing that is if I enter everything up front, then as I go through and I create forms and emails and all of that stuff, everybody, all my contacts are automatically assigned, all of my documents and everything are automatically there, versus not using the wizard. Then I may have to go in and manually do that stuff later. So we're going to leave it checked so you can see what that looks like. So the first thing I need to do is give my transaction a name. So I'm kind of spastic about organization. That's just kind of a personal thing of mine. So I like to name my transactions usually by like last name and then an address. This is going to be specific to how you like to name your transactions. So you may organize your files differently. I just always have a rule of thumb, no matter what, however you're naming your transactions or anything in any sort of system, use a name you can remember, but you wouldn't be embarrassed if your clients were to see it or somebody else were to see it. Because you don't want to have to call in to Instanet or to your MLS team and say, oh, it happens to be the pain in the neck buyer file. The next thing we're going to talk about here is templates. So I'm going to actually come back to this at the end because there are different options for templates. You as brokers can set up your own templates, or if you are your qualifying broker, if they have specific templates set up for you, they can share those with you and require you to use certain forms for every transaction. So just to show you what this looks like, I have some templates set up here in my system. So essentially what this means is, for instance, if we were doing a listing, I have my brokerage, Bulldog Brokerage, which is a fictitious brokerage at the moment. But Bulldog Brokerage here has a listing template. So what this essentially means is for every listing, I have specific documents that fall within that specific template that I want my brokers to use, or that I want to use. It's just to save you from having to upload the same documents over and over again. Your office can set up templates they require you to use, or you can set up your own templates that you can use. So the beauty of templates is it does save you time in the long run. The curse of templates is that every time there's a form change, you have to reset your templates. So there is a little bit of legwork involved there. Next thing is type. So this is for filing, and your broker may have specifics on how they like you to label your files if you are using this company-wide or within a team to manage checks and balances and manage the transaction. Even within your own system, when you're going to find things, and I'll show you how to filter this in a bit, you may want to obviously label all of your listings residential listing. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, import data, this is optional here. I'm going to leave this out. So this will allow you to import data from the MLS system. And so what this does, let's say I was writing an offer on a property. If I pick the MLS to import, what it does is it pulls in that property information into my Instanet account. That may or may not be important for you. It's just to help save time in terms of filling out the paperwork. So that may or may not be an option that you want to use. This is a listing template, so I'm going through this example with the intent that we're going to list this particular property. And then down here, we're going to list me as the seller's broker because I'm going to be the listing agent or the listing broker on this transaction. And now I'm going to hit create. So now we're going to walk through some of the steps. We're not going to go through every single step, but I'm going to point out some specifics that are important. Before I do I have any questions? Okay. Looks like we're good. Tanya's good. Okay. Don't forget, if you have questions, just unmute yourself or just type it up in the chat and I'm monitoring that. Okay, so now you can see the wizard. There's 5 steps to the wizard here. Up at the top, I have my transaction name. And over here off to the right-hand side, I have different, again, different labels for my files. So this is twofold. This is a way that I can categorize my properties. This may help if my QB is helping me with the checks and balances. They're doing the compliance piece. this is a way for them to be able to sort as an office. Okay, I need to see the active files. I need to see the pending files. So they may have for you a way that they want you to label those transactions. I'm going to use active. And again, our transaction status is here. So, you know, once it's closed, file complete, etc. So this is just, again, to help us with filing. So as we go through and sort our transactions, we can easily see what's going on with what. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start adding some of my property information. So I don't necessarily need to add everything, but keep in mind what I add here will start to populate into the forms that I create. So we're going to show you how that works here. So I'm going to just plug in some components here. Oh, street number. Whoops, I always do that. So 1234 Main Street. This happens to be a residential property. This property does not exist, in case you were wondering. Okay, so I can come in here, I can add the MLS number, I can add the year built, I can add as much information as I need to. County. Eight, 7, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can add my listing information. So as I start to add the details here, when I start to create those listing forms or the purchase agreement forms, it's going to populate into my forms. So let me add some other details. Let's say this is a $100,000 listing. Okay. List price 100,000. So from this point, I can save and I can exit the wizard, or I can keep going through the steps. So let's just look at a few more steps here. So step 2, my listing date, let's say it's today, which happens to be the 24th. My expiration date. So homes are moving pretty quickly now. So maybe let's do a 60-day listing. Okay, so our listing date is today. I have a little pop quiz question for you. If we're putting our listing date is today, how many days do we have to activate that listing in the MLS right now, as of today? Anybody remember? 1. Okay, so right now we have 2 days. But Karen, I'm gonna give you the kudos too, because with the implementation of the clear cooperation policy, that is likely to change to 24 hours, but that's not going to happen till likely May. Okay. So the next piece here is adding our contacts. So these are contacts specific to this transaction. I can upload contacts from my Instanet account altogether. So we'll look at that in a bit. But as I start to add contacts here in Instanet, they start to load into my contact card here, which happens to be down here. So it's like a contact database. So I can import them from that database, or I can add them individually here by clicking this add button. So me as the selling broker, I happen to already be in here. My brokerage happens to already be loaded in here as well. So if I click this add button, when I click add existing contact, that is going to pull from my Instanet file here. So you can see some of my other contacts. And so say this is a repeat client or somebody I already have in my database, I could just click and add them to the transaction. I can add a contact from Google. So if you keep your contacts in Google, you can add them here. Or you can create a new transaction contact. So to create a new contact, I just do that here. And I enter all of their details. What type of contact are they? What's their name? How do they prefer to sign? Adding them to the address book adds them over here to my contact book. Okay, so I'm going to add my seller. Brittany doesn't know she's buying a house today. Okay, or selling her house today. Okay. So now I've added my seller here. They happen to already be in my database. But again, if they're not, you just create a new transaction contact and you just add them here. Okay, so the next step, forms. So this is the long way to add forms to my transaction. So we have the option to add templates to our transaction at the beginning. If we had added templates, they would all be listed here. All of those forms would be here. But we didn't do that, so I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of forms just manually, which is fine to do as well. If you have a template, and for this transaction, let's say it's has mold or something, and you need to add an extra form, you can do that. So forms differ from documents. Forms are just that. Forms are the NMAR forms. They are that are not completed and not signed. Once a form is completed and signed, it becomes a document and drops into your document folder. So it becomes that static document that's signed and it's in that folder. And you can add other documents as well. We're going to talk about that in a bit, but first, forms. Forms are just that, the NMAR forms. So I'm going to add my form. My form, this is my random library here. So I find it easiest for me to just search for the name of the form that I need. So I go to my complete library. And what I normally do is I just type in what I need. And so that probably in this case is going to be our exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Got it. But you can see all the forms that pertain to a listing are here. So if I'm listing this property, I click the bubble, it drops in my basket. Let's say, what else do we have? Property disclosure statement. I'm adding that because we're going to talk about that because it's kind of a beast of a form. So I've added all my forms. So as I add them up, they collect in this little basket here. And I add them to my forms library. So now they're here in this transactions forms library. So every form I need is going to be here. Now these are what my client is going to complete. So now that I have what I need, I'm going to hit next. Now when I hit next, you can see documents. So remember, forms are not documents until they're signed. Now I have a fax cover sheet by default here. I'm not going to use that, but I may have some documents I want to add. So documents are static documents. This could include, let's say hypothetically, a hold harmless. Very common to see like an inspection, acceptance, or waiver form, maybe a floor plan, maybe some receipts, whatever that is. So I can add my documents here. And these are things that either I want to include in this file or I need my client to acknowledge. So let's add a form or a document, excuse me. See, I'm even using the wrong lingo here. So I have the option to upload from my computer, copy from another doc box, which we're going to go to in a bit, import from a third party, email upload, download a contact card. I'm going to just do what I find easiest here and just drop it right into Let me see. We'll use, hang on, the handout. So I've pulled in my Instanet handout. So this is my desktop here. And I just drag it right in. And now it uploads that. So this could be, again, let's say this is an inspection, acceptance, and waiver. So that's uploaded right here. And now that's part of my transaction file. Once I'm finished, I select done. So I go through those 5 steps in the wizard. And now my transaction's created. So I have my detail overview. What are the details of this transaction? I've got my documents. We're going to talk more about this document file in a bit. I've got my forms down here at the bottom, which I need to create next, which we're going to do. And then my tasks, which we're going to talk about towards the end of class here. And then this checklist items, we're not going to talk about this in great detail today. This is a feature that's here. It's built in for compliance. So if your broker is using this to manage your transaction files and to check to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, they can do that through the checklist feature. Okay, so we have created our transaction. And the next thing we're going to dive into is creating a form and sending it off for signature. Before I do I have any questions about creating the initial transaction? Okay. Looks like we're good. So now we're going to hop into the forms. So we're listing this property. So we have to prepare. Oh, the finish button. It said done actually. And it was after step number 5 in the wizard, Vince. I can show you again here as we wrap up. So once I create my transaction, now I need to set up my form so that my client can sign this listing agreement. So I'm going to click on the listing agreement here. And now I have my listing agreement. So a couple of things I want to show you in here. There are some things that you can do. I find I use these a lot, actually, because sometimes for other instructors, I'll send a copy of the form so that they can look and reference different things. So these watermarks here, just as an FYI, you can actually watermark your forms and send a PDF ahead of time to your client. So you can watermark it as a draft or a sample and say, you know, for instance, here's a sample of what I'm going to send you, and mark it sample so that it's watermarked and not fillable. Okay. We're going to dive into this one next as well. But we have to fill out our form first. So we have our PIN here. We have a PIN over here as well. Once you have completed your form, the PIN allows you, oh good, Vince, you found what you were looking for. Good. The PIN is AuthentiSign. So AuthentiSign is the e-signing program that is part of Instanet. So you don't have to go out and pay for another program because it's already built into the system. So as I create my form, once I'm ready to, I'm going to pop it up into our AuthentiSign to send it off to my client for signature. So I need to complete my listing agreement. So I'm not going to go through and complete the whole form. Of course, if we were actually listing this property, that's what we would do. But I'm going to complete some components of it here. Okay. Well, actually, for this case, we'll say we're a realtor. So see, now you see here items that are already completed. In our wizard, when we entered our seller name, our listing dates, our address, it already pre-populates into our form. So we don't have to go in and recreate the wheel every time. We've got our property address. It's a residential property. We go through and check what applies. Oh. Good grief, Kelly. Okay. We've got our listing price in here. So we go through and everything that applies to our particular listing, we're going to check and mark and fill out. So just as you would kind of in a typical situation. Okay. All right. So once we've got our listing agreement completed, we're ready to send this off for signature. So I can save it. If I'm not ready to send it off right this second, I just want to save it, and it will save as we have completed it in my forms file ready to go. But let's say I'm ready to send this now. I'm going to hit the sign button here. Now this is going to launch me into the e-signing program. So their e-signing program again is called Authentisign. So when I click confirm, it's going to take me to a separate screen here. Now, before we dive into the nuances of Authentisign, do I have any questions about the fillable forms? Okay. So now I am in Authentisign, and I have to set up my signature. So this is the steps to do that. So I have my signing name here, and this is defaulted to the name of my transaction. If I need to change this, I can. So if I'm sending something supplemental to what they've already signed, or I want to make sure that they see it, I can say, or review. I can, say something that will catch their attention in that subject line. So participant order. So sometimes there is an issue with individuals getting hung up here. And so I want to explain what the difference is. In a lot of cases, first come, first serve is going to be adequate for your signing. What this means is, let's say you have two parties, a husband and a wife, hypothetically, who are going to sign this particular listing agreement. It'll send to them both at the same time, and whoever opens it first signs it. It doesn't matter who. Sign in line, what this means is Kelly has to sign it first, and then Bill has to sign it. So it goes to Kelly first. Kelly signs. Once she has signed, then the next email goes to Bill. That's the difference between the two. So if you've selected this and both parties haven't signed, that could create some confusion. So just know the difference between the two. In this case, first come, first serve is fine. So it means it sends out to all parties at once, and whoever opens it and signs it first opens and signs. Okay, I want to also show you some advanced options here. You can actually set this up with an expiration date. So if it's not signed after 2 days, then it expires and it won't let them open it anymore. So we can set an expiration date. We can also, as an option, set reminders. So send a reminder every 4 hours and repeat until they sign it. So if you have those clients, which I remember when I was selling, I had a few every now and then who either didn't check their email frequently or just didn't always have the same sense of urgency that others had, so to speak. So those reminders can be helpful. And that's strictly an option for you to add or not per transaction. So once I've set up my signing name, my simul sign, and my advanced options, so my reminders if I want them, I have to set up my participants. So when I click on participants, a box pops up. Oh yes, absolutely, Karen. You can add the other broker. You would add them in the wizard. You can do it there. And we can also add them here, which I'll show you how to do now. So now we need to add other parties, including maybe the other broker. So by default, our seller and our seller's broker are listed here because in our wizard, that's who we initially set up. So we want to include them. We're going to talk about this right now. So I'm going to hold off on talking about adding another one just for a second, because I want to just mention, since these boxes have popped up, what they mean. So I've clicked on Kelly, who is the seller. Remote signer. If you are using this program, 99% of the time, they're going to be a remote signer. Even if they're sitting in front of you, chances are they can act as a remote signer. This just means this transaction package goes to their email, they open it, they sign it. In-person signer means they're sitting there in front of you. It's just a different way for them to sign the documents. Not used very often because most times we just do the remote signer to their email, and they could do that even if they're with us. But note here you have a couple of other options. So we have a reviewer option. So let's say we wanted our QB to look at these documents before they get sent through or to our client. We can add them as a reviewer. And what happens is this email package goes to the reviewer. They look at everything. They say, yep, looks good. And then it gets sent through to the signer. So we can add a reviewer. And the CC only, I think this is really convenient as well. So this is a carbon copy option. So let's say after the seller signs, it needs to go to the title company or it needs to go to a mortgage person. We can have that contact in here. They can be a CC only. So I don't have to go out of this system to email it to them. I add them as a CC only. Once that document package is signed, they get an email with a carbon copy of that completed file. So Karen asked about adding the other broker. If I click this add button here, I add my participants. There's an add button outside of this. If I click that, I can add a new participant here. And so this is where I can add, like maybe it's the mortgage individual who's a CC only. So what happens, that package is signed, boom, it goes to their email. Or maybe it's another remote signer, I can add them here. The other broker, maybe it's just a CC only. So once that document package is signed, say Karen, you're the broker on the other end of this deal, I add you as a CC only, and you would get an email with this signed package once it's all signed and done. Any questions? Okay, great. So now I've added my participants. These are going to be who's going to sign this document. Step 3 is adding the documents. So right now it's just our listing agreement that we need to add to this. If I wanted to add something else, I click this add button and I have a whole lot of options here. So my forms and documents, you see my forms and you see my handout, the handout that's in the doc box. So if this was that waiver, inspection acceptance and waiver, I can add that here and I can have my client initial that. Or I can add another form like, oh, I forgot this info sheet. I can come in here and I can add that. Assigned to checklist item, I'm not going to touch on this right now, but this is, again, just from the broker compliance piece. I can assign this to a checklist. So once it's signed, it goes to my broker and they review it, make sure it's complete. Okay, so once my forms are added, the next piece is design. And so design, what it's going to do is it's going to upload this form. Takes a minute. It's going to upload that. And now this is where I'm going to set up for signatures. Bruce had a question. If you're the other broker, how do I save the CC to email to my Instanet account? Perfect. I will, give me just a second. We'll wrap this up and I'll show you how to do that because we're going to get into the contact cards too. So I can show you how to do that. So we've got our documents, our forms that we need to set up for signature. Just one thing to note here. If I had more than one document or form to add here, I can add them here, and the order that I put them in is the order that the client's going to get them in. So now we got to get that guy uploaded here again. Okay, there we go. So again, remember the wizard, and we're doing our work up front so that we don't have to do so much work on the back end. That's what we've done here. Because we identified our seller, Brittany, now everywhere the seller is supposed to initial, she already has an initial tag listed here and it's already set up for us. So that's just aimed to make it a little bit easier for us. So I want to show you a couple of things within this particular signing system just to double check. If you had more than one signer, so let's say our sellers were Brittany and Steve, that happens to be the name of her husband. If I go up here in the top right-hand corner, you can see a drop down that says signers. So you can see that my signing is here, Brittany's signing is here, and her husband, let's say if he was here, he would be listed underneath here. If I click on Brittany, then it's going to highlight her name here. So if I needed to add something extra for her to do, I can add it here under her name. So like, let's say I wanted her to initial right here. Then I could do that. I could drag and drop an initial. And now it's there for her to initial. So what happens is when the signer gets that, for instance, I'm not going to see what Brittany has to initial, but when she has to initial, she's going to see what we have set up for her. So I want to just take you through a couple things, and then I want to talk about some of the tools over here. So again, we can see what we filled out is now on our signing. Her initials are in place here. As we scroll through the form, so we can double check. That's a rogue one. So you have to kind of check. I mean, it's, again, it's a computer program, so it's not a perfect science. This is supposed to be right here. Again, the signature, supposed to be over here. And the date and time stamp. So you just want to scroll through your form to check these. I want to show you something else. You can see when I clicked on this box that a little gray box popped up here. This is where I can delete this. If I click this gear, I have some different options. So I can change my time format if I wanted to. And I can do a couple of different things to that. So now let's talk about some of the different markup and signing tools that you have over here. We're not going to talk about them all, but I want to mention a few of them. So because we set up in the wizard our signers, this actually goes, whoo, that's big. Make it a little smaller. This actually goes over here. Let's talk about some of these tools. So the drag and drops, these are additional signature blocks, optional and required. Green is optional, red is required. These are additional signature blocks I can drop in. So let's say we wanted them to initial something to acknowledge it on a specific line. We can add an initial. So maybe we want them to really emphasize this particular paragraph right here. We can have them initial over here. We have checkboxes. So red is drag and drop checkbox. Blue is an optional checkbox. So red is required, blue is optional. So for instance, if I'm setting up a form where I need my client to check either one or the other, I can use maybe the optional option here. My drag and drop date. So I've got that in here. So there are some forms that you want a drag and drop date in here. So we can add that. Again, if we click on the little gear, we have the option to change that in a particular format if needed, or delete it. Okay, we have a markup tool. We have a text box tool. So the difference between these two, this text box tool, you can see, let me put it right here so we can see it. You can see that it's in blue, and you can see there's a short character limit here. It's optional. If I click on the gear and I change it, it turns to red, which means it's required. This is for the client to type in information. Let me delete it. Let me go to the markup tool. There's a text box tool here. If I click on that guy, right here, qualifying broker's license number. And I add that. I can add text. So for instance, the QB license number, I need that in here. I can add that here so that it's part of that form. I've got a highlighter. So for instance, this paragraph I want her to initial, I can highlight it so that when she gets this form, it's highlighted and initialed. So now we've highlighted it for her to see it, and she's initialed to acknowledge it. I've got circles, so I can circle stuff too. I really want you to see this. So that's always an option. So just to kind of show you some different things that you can use in here to highlight things maybe that you want to emphasize to your client, or any types of markups that you need to make. Any questions so far? Okay. Once our form's all set up, now we send it to our client. So what I need to do first, send invitation sends that completely. I need to customize my invitation. This is just creating the email. So I do my subject. Let me tell her it's a test. So I type my message to my, oops, that's to me. Wrong box. So me as a remote signer, put it in the wrong one, darn it. My client as a remote signer. So all my clients would be listed here just kind of in this format. And this is preparing the email that goes to them. Once I'm done, I hit save. And when I hit send invitation, that's when it sends the email in the signing package to my client. So now that's sent to my client. So now under signings, we're going to look at this here again. I can see it's in review. So I've just sent it off. The lightning bolt means it's in review. Once you have here, and I'll show you in the overall picture, like a little award symbol, that means that it's completely signed. So let me hop in next. Let's move down to the next option here, the AuthentiSign. Now this is my overall AuthentiSign picture here. So this is every single transaction that I have been working with. So I can look at AuthentiSign in my transactions. So within this particular file, I can look at my signings. So over here in my wizard, I can click through and look at my signings. This is just for Main Street. If I click on the pin here, this is everything. So Main Street, test listing, Copper Avenue, everything is listed here. So these happen to have a line through them because I cleaned out my sample folder here. So yours normally won't appear like that. But I wanted to hop in here because I want to show you a couple things. So the lightning bolt means in progress. That means I just sent it. The little gear here means it's in my wizard. So that means that somebody's maybe looked at it, but they haven't signed it yet, or not all parties have signed. And then here's what I was talking about, the little award symbol. This means that it's complete and everybody has signed off on it. So this means it's ready to go. So that's, if you've sent something off to a client and it hasn't come back to you, when you check within your transaction file, that's what these symbols are going to indicate for you. So you'll know visually right away, oh, well, there's somebody still reviewing it, or oh, it's approved. So let me click in here. Click on the three bubbles here. I'm going to open this signing just to show you a couple things. So when I open the individual signing, a couple of things I can do here is, it's not giving me my menu. Okay, well, that's all right. It's normally, hold on, let me try this. Normally, there we go. So I can add a carbon copy. Just a couple things that you can do in here. I could reset this. So let's say that I sent it and I was like, oops, I forgot to include something. I can reset it here so it will retract that particular signing. These over here will tell me what's going on. For some reason, the little symbols are not showing up. But it'll tell me, okay, they're awaiting. So they haven't opened it yet. It will tell me who's opened the file. Have they looked at it? Once they've signed here, a little checkered flag will show up telling me, oh, this person has signed, but this person has not. Authenticated means they've opened the email. Signed means they've signed. And then my document versions is going to be here. So every single time somebody opens and changes the document, they're listed here. So when Brittany signs, the document's going to be listed here with only her signature. When Kelly signs, which is me as the listing broker, Once I sign that, it's going to be listed here, and that will be complete. Once this signing is complete here, all of the documents will turn into documents. So once everything is signed, it ends up here in our documents file. So we're going to see if Brittany picks this up and is able to sign it, and we'll watch it appear here. Vince, I see your question. Just one second. So once that is completely signed, then it ends up in my documents. So it goes from being a form to a static document that's signed and executed in my document folder, which we're going to talk about next. Bruce, I have not forgot about you in your question. I will cover that for you. Vince, how do I change the name of a signing? I send a lot of referrals, but I've never named them. I would like to go back and rename them all. Vince, for a little clarification, are these already signed and executed? Okay. So at that point, I think, let me think through that for a second. I think you can just go through and rename the files and it should be fine. Hold that thought. Let me think about it and let's look at that here in just a second. So once we have our form that's signed here, they become documents. So documents are anything that's signed and executed. Documents can also be things that I upload to my file that I need for this particular transaction. So for instance, we have our handout sample that we uploaded here. Maybe we have a floor plan, that inspection acceptance. Maybe it could be an email, hold harmless. It could be anything. So once those are signed, hold on, I just want to check something. Okay, so now we can see it's in review. Oh, it's still in review. Okay, well, my bad. We'll see if she signs that. So once it's signed, it goes into the documents. And this is kind of where like our final files lie. And so I want to show you a couple of things within here. So I can add documents here, but I can add folders. So I can create folders within each transaction for specific items. So maybe this is floor plans. I can add another folder that says amendments. So now it's just a way to organize my information. So now I have these folders. So things that pertain to these particular items I can put in here. So if this were an amendment, I can drop it, not that way, but I could drop it into, by moving, I could drop it into this amendment folder. There's lots of things that I can do. A couple of other things I want to show you in this menu. These bubbles here will take you to your menu. This will just allow me to rename or delete folders, but on this document, I can rename it. Vince, so this might be one thing for you. For instance, let's say this is a signed referral agreement. Maybe you just create a folder that says referral agreements, and then within your documents, you just have an individual folder for each particular property or person. And then if you just click on the document here, you can rename it. Where did it go? Oh, rename. Can't read. Rename it here, and then that might help you organize some of that information. Does that partially answer your question? The signing piece I haven't covered yet. We can look at that. Oh, okay, cool. So a couple of other things I can do. So I can move it here, obviously, to a specific file. Slice and markup. So this is, let's say this was, I know this used to happen a lot. How many of you have ever received a complete contract package back and it's like 96 pages? Not really, but it may seem like that. The slice tool allows me to split up my document. So let's say this was a purchase agreement and this was a property disclosure. I can slice it so that I have purchase agreement, property disclosure. So that essentially I can take that document from being 96 pages to, being 4 individual documents. This little guy we're not going to talk about. This is the compliance piece. If I were sending this to my broker to check for me, I would just click the little bell and it notifies them that this document's ready for them to review. Sure, Karen, the slicing? Okay, perfect. So just to run through the slicing again, I'm going to use this handout. Let's say this was several documents composed into one PDF. I'm going to hit menu, slice. And we're going to slice it, not mark it up. So slicing is just cutting it. So I've got my 4 pages here. So let's say I want to turn this 4 pages into 2. So I just click on the pages that I need and I hit save. So I can save or save as or replace the document. In this case, we're going to save as, and I'll just say listing agreement 2 pages and say save. Okay, so now I've closed out. Yes. So now you can see I've got the complete handout here and the just the 2 pages that I needed. So that's slicing the document. Let me see. Okay, couple of other, let me see if there's anything else. History, just to note, you can see the history of the signing. So if this was a something that had been signed electronically, the history just shows me the certifications of the digital signature. Can you merge documents into one? I think you can. Let me. That I may have to experiment with. Hold on just a second. Let me see if I can do that. If not, on this particular call, then I will find a reference for you and send it out. Let me just see something. Danielle, let me look into that a little bit more for you and send something out after this call. I think you can, but I can't recall off the top of my head how to do that. So rather than try to search for it here, let me just find it after and I'll send it out. You are welcome. Okay. So that's just giving you an overview of the documents folder. So here, this little box right here is your doc box. So if I click on this doc box here and I click transaction folders, just to show you here, this is where all of the folders for each transaction lie. So as I click, I can see those folders and it just gives me those folders in that transaction in a list format. So just something to note there as well. Okay, a couple of other things. I have a calendar because we're going to get into the tasks next. But to do that, we'll end up here, but I'm going to start in the transaction first. So I'm going to go back into this particular property. So let's pretend we're in our transaction. Let's say that our client Brittany has signed that listing agreement and we're ready to go. So now the next step is going to be to create some tasks. So before we do that, do I have any other questions? I know Vince, not Vince, I think it was Bruce. I still haven't answered your question, but we're getting to it. Okay. So the tasks, this is probably sad to admit, but this is probably one of my favorite things within most of these transaction management programs is the task manager. So would you all agree that most transactions have various deadlines that have to be followed? Would y'all say yes? Yeah, Tanya, I would agree with that too. Karen. So the task manager in here allows us to add our contract tasks or our property tasks in one place. So what I like about this is I can add these here for this transaction. And if I click on this calendar, every single task for every transaction I have loads up here. So I can essentially click on this calendar every single day and I can see every task that I need to complete for my transaction. So really helps in terms of, you know, staying within contracts, staying compliant and things like that. So once our transaction has started, and we want to create those tasks, I'm going to go ahead and hit go to tasks here. And this is for this particular transaction. So this property on Main Street is our listing. I'm going to go ahead and hit add task, photos. So this is going to be whatever this looks like for you and however you like to track stuff. So when I was listing and selling properties, I was pretty specific and task lists that I had for every single transaction. So that may or may not be your method. But I can go in and add everything to like when I take photos, when I have the keys, like for every listing, I set up specific automated email campaigns. I can get that detailed, or I can just do things that pertain to, you know, the particular contract parameters. So maybe it's photos in here. Okay, so with the date and time, I can do a couple of things. I can relate it to specific tasks. So once task A is completed, then task B becomes something that needs to be done. I could relate it to a transaction date. So once objections and waivers happens, then, you know, resolutions happen. Or I can say on a specific day and time or no due date. I think it's easier on the brain to just say on a specific date and time. And I plug in that date and time. Oh, good, Tanya. So yeah, the task manager, it's not like highly used, and I don't know why. Yeah, it's probably just because I'm a nerd and that's things that I like. But yeah, really, really useful tool. Useful to help, especially if you're managing 3, 4, 5 transactions. This can be really useful. So I'm going to say just do on a specific time, and I'm going to say Friday. I can even set down a time like Friday at 5 o'clock. I can say anytime. I can actually send myself a reminder. I can actually set up, I don't have it here, but I can set up reminders and assign them to specific people. So if I have more than one person working on my team and I want somebody, maybe a buyer's broker, to be aware of something, I can share that task with them and say, notify them via email. Notify all assigned users so that they get a heads up, like, hey, don't forget this is due. And then there it is. It's listed here. So I'll get a reminder about it. They're all listed here. I can set it up so it sends me an email and lets me know, hey, these are your tasks that are due for today. So essentially, even you'll get an email every single day or when these tasks are due, and everything in your email in one place. Hey, here are all your tasks that are due. Let's see, a couple of comments. Tanya thinking most don't know about it. I think you're right. Yeah, you're probably right. Most probably learned it on the fly. And these are just little nuances and tricks that are there. Vince, yeah, so the due dates, to kind of answer your question here, maybe are going to really be specific to the terms of your contract. So whatever your contract stipulates, you can go in and plug in here in the due dates. I think the best way to do it is to just enter the dates manually, because having one trigger after another, to me, that just complicated things. Is there a checklist to learn all the due dates and tasks, etc.? You might talk to Julie a little bit about it too. My best suggestion would be, again, because with aside from like your MLS due dates and stuff, which is right now 2 days, it all is very contract dependent. So you might review your contracts, like the purchase agreement and listing agreement, just to get a sense for how those are handled. And some of them are going to be kind of specific on what market conditions are taking place. But Julie may be able to offer some more insight for you on that as well. But there's kind of no standardized checklist about specific due dates and tasks. They're all going to be very specific to each individual transaction, which I realize does not help you at all in that answer. But it looks like Julie's going to answer it for you. Oh, whoops. Let me run back to tasks here. Oh, yeah, Bev Hilton. Yeah, she teaches a contract class, and those are really great too. Okay. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, each QB is going to have a required checklist for your documents. And I'm going to show you a couple of other things here as well. So before we move on, there's a couple of other things I want to mention. I'm going to answer the contact question for Bruce, and then we're going to move into templates and stuff. Do I have any other questions about tasks? Okay, cool. So let's move in quickly. I'm going to skip over this fax, Instafax here. So there's a like a e-faxing option in here as well, which most of us don't utilize. I have actually heard that this isn't very efficient. So I would probably look for other sources outside of this for that. Most of us don't use that anymore. But let me scroll back up here. Bruce, your question. Okay, if you are the other broker, how do I save the CC email to my Instanet account? Okay, so what I have done, Bruce, here, I've jumped down here to the contact tab here. You also, if I go into my transactions, each transaction in your wizard here on the right-hand side has a contact card. So within each transaction, this is the contacts that pertain to this transaction. And then this contact card over here, the little Rolodex symbol, this is for everything. So within my whole Instanet, these are all my contacts. So what I can do is just add a contact here, create new transaction contact, and let me see something. So Hold on just a second. Because the question was, how do I add them as a CC? And I think, sorry, I'm hopping around here quite a bit because I'm looking for something. So what I think is going to occur for you, Bruce, when you add your contact to the transaction. So I've got my contacts here. So what happens is when I hop into the signing and I set up that particular signing, that's not what I wanted. By default, if I set an individual as a CC, they're going to show up as a CC the next time. But it looks like, and I'll check into this just to make sure, but it looks like for each particular signing, you're going to have to just check that they're a CC or they're a reviewer or whatever, but it should save from the last time that whatever you marked them as the last time. But I will check that to confirm, but it looks like that's going to be the case. Okay, a couple of other things I just want to cover in the few minutes we have left. I just want to hop down here to this, the setup gear. So a couple of things that I can do in here is I can set up templates, transaction templates. So this is if I want to have a template that I can assign to my transaction. So for instance, for a listing, we know every single time we need a listing agreement, or we need specific forms that are required. So Vince, I think you were talking about a checklist. So your QB, for instance, may have, for every listing, I want you to have a listing agreement, the info sheet, the MLS info sheet, and a property disclosure. So you can come in here and you can create a new template. Residential listing, and I can give it a description here. And I can create a new template for this transaction. So I've got my test template, residential listing. I can say in here what, more details if I want. And then I can come in and create my template. So I can say, give me these forms, and I can add the forms for the listing. So let's say my broker requires those particular forms. I'm just going to add one for now. But whatever forms my broker requires, I can add here. Or as a QB, FYI, they can do it and they can assign the templates to everybody. I can add documents and folders. So for instance, I think you guys in most offices have some kind of inspection waiver. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Julie. So under documents and folders, this is where you would add brokerage specific forms. So I would just come in here and add a document, and I would add all of those documents that are required that are brokerage specific. I would add those right here. So those are going to show up. So let's drag this guy in here again. So all those brokerage specific forms can come under here. I can add folders too. So every time I create a listing, I have the same folders for my listing. I have the same contacts. So I can come in here and I can add my broker. So every time I create a listing, my broker is automatically there. Checklists I'm not going to get into because this is from the compliance standpoint. But this is like if your broker had a specific checklist for your file, you can upload this here. So once you do this, whoops, my screen just froze. So once you create your transaction template, I've added all my forms, my required documents, my folders, my contacts. What happens is when I go to create that new transaction and I select template. So let's say that's the template. Let me show you here. Every single time I create that listing, it's going to be the same file structure. Okay, see. Okay. I've done that. I am good. So every time I do that, it's going to be, so this is a sample I set up. It's going to have the same documents, the same folders, the same, even tasks. I can go in and I can set up tasks and say, you know, this is a listing, so I need the keys, I need the photos, I need to set up the automated emails. So every single transaction is the same. It's formatted and structured the same for every single transaction every time. So that's what templates allows you to do. The downside of the templates is when we have form changes like we've been having frequently, you have to go in and you have to update your templates. Any questions about templates? I have about 2 minutes left and there's a couple of things I want to mention. Okay. So one thing I do want to mention is in our test, we had a property disclosure statement. The bummer thing with the property disclosure statements is there is no easy way. These are not fillable. They're not fillable because they're a beast of a form and there's just too many fields for somebody to complete electronically. So this is the only form where they have to obviously manually fill it out and PDF it to you or provide it to you in some other way. So that's just one thing I want to mention. It's kind of a bummer deal, but it's consistent across transaction management platforms. So it's not just Instanet. A couple of other things you can do in here. There's an email upload button. So I can actually email documents right from this particular, right from Transaction Desk or Instanet. So I don't have to go out of the system to do that. Each transaction also has a specific email address. And so this is something that, oh, it does. .loop allows the seller to fill out the disclosure statement online. Okay, good to know. I know Instanet does not, and I don't think SkySlope or Zip Forms does either off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure they don't. So just something good to note there. So within Instanet, each transaction receives its own unique email address. And so this unique email address is kind of a beast. But the nice thing about it is I can copy this email address. And as I communicate with my clients, I can CC this email address and my documents and my correspondence drops into my particular transaction file. So I don't have to like forward and drag and drop stuff. If I CC this email address, then it will load those files into my documents. So just kind of makes it easy to help move stuff and keep everything in one place. And I think that's the other big thing that I wanted to mention. I know afterwards I have some questions for follow-up to answer. But that is the generalized overview of how to use your Authentisign and Instanet Transaction Desk. You can come in here and obviously update your email signatures and things like that within your preferences. One other thing that I did want to mention is they do have a mobile app that you can link to your mobile device. However, it's not super robust. So like you can kind of get things and review things from the app, but like initiating signings and moving documents and stuff like that, it's not super great at. So just to kind of give you a heads up about that as well. Do I have any other questions about the program today? If not, I've got a couple of review questions for you guys, and then we will break for the day. Any other questions I can answer? Yeah, it does. I agree, Danielle. It does work on your phone. It's more cumbersome, I think. And so it's good in a pinch, but to do a full-blown transaction, it's not going to be very efficient. I agree. Okay, so a couple of quick review questions for you. Can somebody tell me the difference between, or anybody chime in? Chada, yes, I recorded this, so you can watch the whole thing after we're done here. The difference between your forms and your documents. Anybody, everybody chime in and let me know the difference. Yep, Karen, forms are blank, docs are signed. Docs are signed. Forms are blank, docs are uploaded from the computer. Absolutely. Yeah, so your docs are static, already signed, sealed, delivered. Your forms are blank. What about SimulSign? So this is in AuthentiSign. I'm using AuthentiSign. What is the difference between SimulSign and your sign in line? Anybody remember? Yeah, SimulSign, anybody can sign first. Exactly. Yeah, you guys got it. Signing an order versus not signing an order. Absolutely. Okay, and then last question is an open-ended question. So tell me 1 to 2 things you learned that you didn't know before taking the class today. Tasks, folders, and tasks. Awesome. Good. Task and email. I'm glad that was helpful for all of you guys. Oh, good. Bruce. So Bruce got an overview of Instanet. Oh, good. Thank you, Karen. Good. Awesome. So I've recorded this. So I will get this over to Julie to get out to you guys. So if anybody missed pieces of it or they want to go back and review, you can definitely do that. Danielle, I think I had something to answer for you. So I'll dig into that and send it over as well. And again, if you need anything, just let me know. We're here. We're working remotely because of this whole COVID-19 thing. But we are available, email, phone, etc. So just give me a shout and we'll see you guys soon. If I don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and sign off. You're welcome.